I was essentially made redundant twice whilst on maternity leave. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Not everyone likes the idea of starting their own business. Not everybody um, feels that they can do it. When I look at successful entrepreneurs, the one thing I see in common is that they just don't stop. I think the only reason you're going to fail or your business will fail is because you stop.
A lot of times we think that being wealthy is about, having this like amount of money, but being wealthy is really like you mentioned, that freedom to be able to do
Hmm.
exactly like what you want to do.
I realized that, you know what, my best as a mother is not going to look the same as my best as a single girly. So I need to just be my best in this stage of life. What we're seeing in the media is not actually reflective of real life. And that's where like the whole narrative gap comes into play because the two are not aligning, the two are not meshing. And I think this is why so many people are craving authenticity in content.
Today's verse of the day is Deuteronomy 8, verse 18. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Paula Oyinkan Bello is a podcaster, speaker, and an entrepreneur on her way to change the media landscape. After being made redundant twice through maternity leave, she launched the Paula Oyinkan Show, where she highlights the voices of women and gives them a chance to tell their own narrative. Not only is she putting women at the forefront of media, but she is the founder of Mercari Studios, an AI-powered creator studio that helps turn women's stories into brands. Thank you so much for joining me today, Paula. Uh,
Thank you for having me.
yeah. So I love your story because it is one of what happens when a woman, or and not just any woman, recognizes her power, right? And you decide that, you know what, I'm gonna take a bet of myself. And I think that I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. A lot of sometimes what they say is like the best investment that they've made on themselves, they've ever taken, is the one that they made on themselves. So congratulations for taking that
Thank
bet
you.
on yourself. So you started your show, the Paula Oyinkan Show, after you walked away from the corporate world. Can you walk me
Yeah.
through like what were the things that happened that made you realize it is time to leave and step away? Also,
Mm.
was it something you have always been passionate about? I know you've had other businesses in the past, but yeah.
Hmm. I love that you say walked away. I feel like I was kind of kicked out and then I decided not to go back. But no, I obviously there was a decision in the process as well. So um I would to start with, it definitely has always been a desire of mine to be a full-time entrepreneur. Like
Mm,
I knew clearly when I was at university, so I was probably about 19, 20, when I realized that ultimately what I wanted to do is just run my own businesses. So that decision kind of shaped how I maneuvered the corporate world anyway and what industry I went into. Um, so yeah, I would say I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know it would happen full time at this point.
mm,
Um, but the actual journey was essentially I was on maternity leave, and I was on maternity leave with my second child, and I was kind of like preparing to go back to my job. Um, and a lot of people, when I say I was made redundant on maternity leave, they're like, "Oh, is that legal?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, to be honest with you." But it didn't come as a surprise to me just because the company was restructuring anyway. So prior to me going on maternity leave again with my second child, there was already a lot of like restructuring. There was a lot going on. There was meetings in all sorts of places. So I knew potentially something could happen. Um, so what happened is actually the first month of my maternity leave, whilst I was still pregnant, my manager sent a meeting request to catch up. And I thought it was a bit odd because I was literally a month into my maternity leave. But I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then also he had CC'd HR into it. So again, I kind of knew something was going to happen. So yeah, we had that meeting, and in that meeting, he told me that my role had been made redundant, that they were going to create another role that I could step into, or obviously I could just go ahead and take the redundancy. And at that time, I decided to take the new role that they created. So for the duration of my maternity leave, I was meant to be going back into this new role. And then around about the time when we'd started conversations about me coming back into work, I had another meeting with HR and the new
Wow.
manager at the time to then say that the role that they created had also been made redundant. So I was essentially made redundant twice whilst on
Wow.
maternity leave. Yeah. Um, and but the second time it was better timing for me because I'd already had about a year's worth of maternity leave. So I was kind
Mhm.
of looking to start coming back to work. Whereas if I had taken the first redundancy, I would have not really been paid for my whole maternity leave, and I don't know financially how that would have looked. Um, so yeah, the second time I was made redundant again, and then I was kind of at a place where initially I did actually start applying for jobs because I thought, well, I need to get another job. Let me just get back into it. So I started applying for jobs. Um, I was getting really frustrated with the job specs that I was seeing. It was all like enhanced maternity leave, but they wouldn't tell you what that was, or competitive salary, but they don't tell
Hmm.
you what it is. And for me, I think, especially after becoming a mother, like time really is money. My time is so precious to me, and I don't want to waste my time applying for a job that has a competitive salary only to find out it's significantly less than what I would like to have as a salary.
Mhm.
So yeah, I kind of like I had conversations with my sisters and different women in my life, and I was like, actually, this could be a great opportunity to just go all in on something. So yeah, I decided to take that step of just going all in on the Paula Oyinkan show because I realized there was a gap in terms of just content that really spoke to me as an individual and to the kind of women that are in my life. I wasn't seeing the conversations that we have online. It just felt like there wasn't a lot of depth to the conversations that were happening online. So I just thought, okay, I'll give it a year and just go all in and see what happens. And here we are.
No, that's amazing. And it's kind of like I can imagine the first time it happening for you to be like, "Oh my gosh, oh my god." Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like I think like as you're talking I'm thinking about so many of the women that have been like this year alone that have had to like step away from the workforce because, like
Hmm.
return to office or like all of that other stuff or even like, and so like that fear of like what is going to happen. But I'm glad that
Yeah.
like a year later you've been able to like I guess calculate and and figure it out or try to
I guess
figure it
so.
out.
Yeah. I mean, it's working so far. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you mentioned before that before the Paula Oyinkan show, you started other businesses. What has been your driving force, right? You mentioned like you knew that you've always wanted to start your own businesses. So always been like goal oriented and ambitious. And so, what do you think was like the driving force behind that? And then like what was the difference that you saw in the Paula Oyinkan show that you think might have been different from the other shows?
Do you know what? I think to start with, like the last bit of that question, I don't know if there really was a difference per se in terms of like the idea. I think I have great ideas, to be honest with you. I've decided to like just speak with authority, and I'm not gonna try and make a humble thing because I know that I have good ideas. So I know that all of the businesses I've had in the past, they were all very good ideas. But I think what is different this time around is that I have the experience of those businesses, and I know how I would have approached those businesses differently, and I'm applying that to the Paula Oyinkan show and everything that I'm building around that. So I would say that that is the main differentiator. It's not that any of those ideas were not good. It's just that I'm now coming from a place of experience. Um, and in terms of my driving force, I feel like this is a great question because I know that entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Not everyone likes the idea of starting their own business. Not everybody um, feels that they can do it. But I think for me, I I'm probably I've been around entrepreneurial people. I think this is why I feel like, is it a nature versus nurture thing? Because I do feel like my family is very entrepreneurial. My mum, growing up, she had her own business. My dad, like later on, like he went down the corporate route and then he started his own business. My mum's dad had his own business. Like so many people in my family have their own businesses. So I don't know if it's just a nature kind of thing because I'm around it, I see it, or if it's just like how I'm meant to be. And also, I think maybe me as a person, I don't really like being told what to do. I want to do what I want. So I guess that is part of the driving force as well, is that I just want to do what I want to do. I want to be free, to be honest. I think I've been doing a lot of self-reflection over this past year of, just going all in on my own thing. And I think that's what entrepreneurship does. But one thing I really realized recently, one of the main driving forces, especially after having children, is the desire to have freedom and live life on my own terms. And I think sometimes when we think about freedom, it seems like, oh, this big thing. But honestly, I think for me, freedom is really in the small things. It's just, I want to be able to pick my kids up when they finish nursery without feeling like, oh, I need to just email my manager and is this okay? Like, I want to get up and leave my house when I want to without having to tell people where I am or what I'm doing. If I want to have a nail appointment at 9 a.m. on a Monday, I want to do that without feeling bad. And it's such a small thing, but I really do think that that is one of my driving forces is the freedom to actually live my life on my own terms so that I can also be present for my children, present for my family, and just actually live life.
I love that because I was recently listening to a podcast about the psychology of money. I forgot the money
Mm,
the author, but he was talking about like, a lot of times we think that being wealthy is about, having this like amount of money, but being wealthy is really like you mentioned, that freedom to be able to do
hmm.
exactly like what you want to do. And I think also I feel like when you become a mom, there is that like
Yeah.
desire as well to be like, no, I want to own this because you understand like
Hmm.
how precious that time is. And do you think
Hmm.
though that that is more innate in this generation, meaning me and yours generation, than the previous one, right? Because I think the previous one was more focused on something else.
It's such a tricky one. I definitely agree that like when you become a mum, that fire inside of you, it just goes to another level. I think a lot of the time people think, oh, like when I become a mum, my life's gonna stop. I'm not gonna be able to do anything. But honestly, becoming a mum has been one of my biggest drivers. Like I want to live my life on my own terms to show my kids that they can do the same. Like I want to set my kids up so that they can do the same. And I think with previous generations, I feel like it was different. Not to say that becoming a mum wasn't their driving force. I think what freedom looked like was a different kind of thing. So for me, for instance, my parents, they moved from Nigeria to the UK. So I'm a first generation um Nigerian, I don't know, like just being in the UK
Yeah.
basically. So for them, I saw a really interesting interview. I can't remember who it was with, and that person said for 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 people that moved from another country into the UK, their main driving force was security. They really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to just have, security for their family. That's why a lot of Nigerian parents were like, you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever, because those careers were stable and secure. Whereas with like the first generation, what we're looking for now is that freedom, is like actually the flexibility to live life on our own terms because we already have the security. Like we're in a country that's, I mean, fairly stable in comparison to like other
Yeah.
countries or where a lot of people migrated from. So I think what the driving force was just different, and I feel like that is why it comes across differently in different generations as well.
No, that's a good point because I'm also Nigerian. My mom came
Oh,
from
get it?
Nigeria to the U.S. And so like it is a little bit of like, okay, this is, she's kind of paving the way for my generation, for our
Exactly.
generation to do like that idea of like follow the freedom versus like they had like a different priority. So one of the hardest things that can happen is when people walk away from what they is for people to walk away from what they're comfortable with. And you did that. Obviously you mentioned that you were made redundant twice, so you were forced out basically twice.
Yeah.
How did you overcome fear or the doubt? I mean, like,
Mm,
I know that even when me started this podcast, I was like, I was excited for it, but the excitement comes,
yeah.
and then after that excitement dies down, you email the first like 10 or 20, you're like, oh my gosh, are they gonna get it back to me? Are they getting back
Yeah.
to me? And then no, like one or two, and you feel that disappointment is like, is this gonna work? Or even like as I'm in the midst of it now, I'm just like, it's because I already made the commitment to myself, but sometimes that
Mm-hmm.
commitment is so hard to follow through. So how did you like, you know, make it work? How did you overcome that fear? And what is your
Mm-hmm.
advice for moms who like want to go on that like entrepreneurship start, journey or start something new?
Mm-hmm. I think overcoming the fear, it's a hard one because firstly, I think a lot of people think it's a fear of failure, but for me, I realized it was more a fear of success, which is it's a strange thing to say, but I think my fear was more. It's like almost I was self-sabotaging. I stopped posting content when things were going well. Like I just stopped posting when I was getting traction, and I think it was because I was thinking, oh, like if this podcast does well, like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know like how to make this happen. And honestly, what I did because I also had a lot of limiting beliefs like, oh, I've had so many businesses before, they've not really succeeded, they've done this, they've done that. And I just had to just try and flip that narrative. So, yeah, maybe financially they didn't succeed, but actually you learned this. You actually
Hmm.
were able to produce a product, you actually were able to build a community. Like, so I was just leaning more into the truths as opposed to just my feelings in that situation. And honestly, I really do believe that sometimes you just have to push through the fear. There's not always an answer like of do X, Y, and Z and that fear goes away. And I actually don't think it goes away. I think at each stage you're gonna be at a place where you're scared or you feel like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work or oh, like this is gonna go wrong or whatever. But you just kind of have to push through it. And I really do believe that growth happens outside of your comfort zone. So if you're not feeling a little bit scared or a little bit worried, then maybe you're in a place where you're comfortable. And if you're in that place, you probably won't stretch yourself as much as you really can. So I think it is just a matter of pushing through that fear. I know that's not really a substantial or practical takeaway, but you genuinely just need to feel the fear and do it anyway. And same like in terms of the advice for mums who want to take that entrepreneurship journey, just do it. I feel like we overthink things all the time. My first business that I started, I had that idea in 2014 and I didn't start until 2017 because I was
Mm.
researching, I was doing this, I was doing that. And honestly, in that year, 2017, when I launched, I learned way more than the 3 years where I was researching and trying to figure things out. So now, when I have an idea, I just act on it. I just see like what happens, like try and move things forward in whatever way you can. And my biggest piece of advice is to just do it. I think a lot of people also feel like, oh, but how do I do it? Where do I start? You don't need to think about the whole big picture. I'm trying to build $1 billion ecosystem. I've got no clue how to make that happen, but I'm just putting one foot in front of another. Like sometimes all you need to do is focus on the next step and then everything else will fall into place.
I wonder though, obviously I know that you're very entrepreneur oriented, right? But I feel like for how did you go from like I'm gonna just keep trying, I'm just gonna keep trying from one
Mm,
business
hmm
to the other, right? Because I think that sometimes someone would do a business, it won't work out the way that they want, and they'd be like, okay, not for me, let's move on, never going never
hmm
doing that
hmm
again. So how
Yeah.
did you get over like, you know what, this idea didn't work out, but you know what, my next idea will. Oh, this didn't work
hmm
out, but my next idea will. Because I think that that's really truly the path for a lot of entrepreneurs, and that like they just never stop trying new things.
Yeah.
So
That
tell
is
me the
it.
secret.
That's it. I feel like you've told the secret. You just never stop trying because every business idea I start or I move ahead with, I always think this is it. This is gonna make millions. Like this is gonna do it. Like that's always what I think. But even me, when I look at successful entrepreneurs, the one thing I see in common is that they just don't stop. I think the only reason you're gonna fail or your business will fail is because you stop. It's because you're not consistent. Because you just yeah, I really think that's it. You just have to keep going. Um and I think also we need to get over. worrying about what other people think of us, because I do think that that is something um that a lot of people worry about when it comes to starting a business. Oh, like, what if it fails and people are gonna laugh, or people are gonna say this, or people are gonna do that? But it really doesn't matter what people think, because those same people who are laughing at your failed business, when your business is blowing up and successful, they're gonna say, "Oh, I knew her. Oh, we went to school together," or whatever. And I'm seeing a lot of content around like the price, um, the price of to success is embarrassment or something like that. Basically, like the to get to success, you're gonna have to push through the embarrassment and the cringe and whatever it is. So I think you need to just have an unwavering belief in yourself, because for me, I know that I'm gonna do great things. So even if this thing doesn't work, maybe this is not the thing I'm gonna do great things in. Maybe it's the next thing. So I really do think that you need to have an unwavering belief in the fact that you're going to succeed, and also be willing to like adjust the way in which you're going to succeed. Because I think if you believe that you're going to succeed, but it's like, I'm going to succeed in this fashion brand, that's the only way I can succeed, then it's almost like you're cutting yourself off from other ways in which you could succeed. So it's like, if that business fails, it's like you are a failure, when in reality, that's not the case. You could actually just be a successful tech entrepreneur and not a fashion entrepreneur, but you've closed yourself off to that opportunity because this is the only way in which you can see success happening.
I wonder though, like, how long do you give an idea before you say, okay, maybe I need to
Mm.
move to something else? Because there's some people who are like, I'm gonna do fashion, and they do it for like 20 years, and you're like, well, I think maybe it's time to
Yeah.
actually, get a job instead of
Mhm.
focusing on like that fashion, or maybe try something else. So, what's your advice to, to like, how long should I test something and try something out first before I think, okay, this didn't work out the way that I want to? Doesn't mean I failed,
Mhm.
but maybe I should like think about something else that could possibly work out.
Mm. This is honestly, that's a great question, and I think it's something that is quite personal to each person. Because even with me, so that first business I mentioned, it was a footwear brand for ladies with larger feet. So I launched it in 2017, and then honestly, I think I decided to just pause and stop it in, I want to say like 2021 or
Okay.
2022. So it was for a few years that I was doing it, trying different things, just trying to invest here, relaunching, doing this, doing that. And it was with a very heavy heart that I decided to pause it, because honestly, I love shoes, and I know that it's a great idea, but it just wasn't working, and I didn't have the funds or the capacity to carry on. So for me, I think it's a matter of like looking at what is your goal here. Part of the reason I decided to pause that was because I was like, okay, I actually want to be a full-time entrepreneur. These shoes are not selling as much as I want to. Maybe I need to focus on doing something that is more like high ticket, where I could charge people a lot more and have fewer clients, but that covers my expenses. So that was why I decided to pause it, so I could focus on doing that other thing. Um, so in terms of an actual time frame, it's really hard to say. I think if it's like you're just not getting any traction at all from this thing, like you're not growing, and this is like you're not growing, but you're being super consistent and you're getting, you're doing everything that you need to do. If you're not getting any traction at all and no one is interested, then I would wrap that up pretty quickly. Like, if let's say you're doing it for 6 months, six, seven, eight, nine, let's say you do it for a year and you've been consistent in that year and you've not gained any following, you've not seen any kind of engagement from people, you've not made any sales, like there's not been zero interest, then I think it's time to call it quits on that. But honestly, I'm a real believer in, if you just keep going, it will always work out. Because when
Mm.
you see a lot of these overnight successes, for the most part, they've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
you need to be, I think, oh, again, it sounds like I watch TikTok all the time from all these content references I'm making, yeah. But I saw another video and it said something like, the thing that really sets people apart is that successful people are willing to do the mundane things for an inordinate amount of time. Like,
Mm.
you need to be willing to do it for years for it to really blow up. And even in those years, it's not like you're not going to see successes, you're not going to make sales. But I think for it to get to those places where it's like, you're really at the top of the top, that's gonna take years of hard work.
No, I agree. I think that like one of the things that I've learned is like you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over
Literally,
and over.
that's it.
And I think that in one of your podcasts you did mention like, you know, you learn from the little things, right? You learn like
Yeah.
you're not just learning from like maybe it's not like, you know, this huge amount of money that you made, but like you're learning the successes, like you learned this, or the successes this happened. Like you learn
Hmm.
to take like little things as success, I guess, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense. And that's literally it. I think it's always because like a lot of us see success as, oh, this being £1 million business or it making six figures or whatever. So if you end up making like four figures and you've built a community of 100 people, it feels like, oh, well, that was a failure. But actually, it's not. 100 people is a lot of people, and even making four figures is something, you know. So yeah, I think it
Yeah,
is learning
I
from
love
those
that. And
mistakes.
one thing that also helped me is like I'm like sometimes you're not built for that overnight success.
Hmm.
You know, like you talk
It's
about like
true.
fear of failure. Like I mean fear of success. Like what if it does blow up in overnight and now you have this huge responsibilities? It's like those people who win
Exactly.
the lottery, like they end up like falling harder and faster.
Exactly.
So like it's better to do slow growth, I guess. I
Hmm. No,
yeah.
do you know what? It actually is. And I think it's a hard pill to swallow, but it is the truth. Even this reminds me of an interview that I did with a lady called Desiree on
Hmm.
the Paula Oyinkan show. And she spoke about how her brand is basically like books and children's products that are diverse. And she spoke about how she went viral overnight and then she literally burnt out because
Mm,
she didn't have the infrastructure for what happened
yeah.
from that virality. So that slow growth is where you actually build up the infrastructure. You learn, you test. When something breaks, you're able to fix it, not because like thousands of people have now ordered and you actually just don't even have the capacity to fulfill that. So
Hmm.
slow growth, it is better. It's
It
a
is.
hard pill to swallow, but it is better.
It is. It is. It is. Because, like you mentioned, in obscurity, you can fail, and like nobody cares. Like nobody cares.
Exactly. It's
But like,
true.
yeah. So I love that. I really loved your mission, and so which is building a $1 billion ecosystem that puts women at the center of podcasting by shifting those who get seen, heard, and paid. And I love it because you mentioned one of the podcasts that I listen to. I'm sure everybody listens to, the Diary of a CEO, and how there's
Oh
not a
yeah.
lot of women, you know, in there. And you know, you don't really think about like, you know, wow, there aren't that many top performer women on, you know, these podcasts. I mean, I could think of like one like Candace Owen, but like not
Yeah.
not a lot of other
Hmm.
people. So how did you come about your mission? What need did you
Hmm.
see in the podcast? Obviously, I just said it, but you know,
Hmm.
like what need did you see in the podcasting field that made you believe this is important?
Hmm.
I can get here, or I can make it happen. Um,
That's such a good question. And I would even say that like the mission has expanded a bit more because initially I actually wanted it to be media, but I was advised to like niche it down. But more
mm.
recently, I've been like, no, do you know what? It is going to be media because I think there's a real issue with representation in the media. So
Yes.
like now it is more focused on media as a whole, but I guess starting with podcasting because I'm in podcasting. Um, so I think for me, the gap I saw was really that epiphany moment where I was listening to an episode of The Diary of the CEO. Like, I've been an on and off listener of the podcast anyway. Usually, I listen if there's a topic that I find quite interesting. So I was listening and enjoying. I think it's a great podcast. This is not to slate the podcast at all, but then it literally just clicked in my mind like, there's no black women on this podcast. And then I decided to count how many black women there were because I knew it was so few. I knew I would easily be able to count. And it turned out that less than 2% of their guests are black women.
Mm-hmm.
Even the number of guests who are women is quite few. And for me, I just felt like it was kind of eye-opening because this is a platform which I would class as mainstream. It's got over a million, over 11 million subscribers. So that has a huge impact. And it's almost like Black women's voices are being erased. and it may not be intentional. And to be fair, the target audience for the show is probably white men anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why maybe they focus a bit more on having men and white men on the show, but it still doesn't negate the fact that a platform with that level of influence doesn't really have any black women to show for. And again, for me, like, I'm very well aware of loads of black women killing it. Like, there's so many black women that could feature on the podcast. And I put out a post about that on social media, and it did quite well. But one of the comments that really stood out to me was a black woman, and she said something along the lines of like, oh, maybe the reason they don't feature that many black women is because there aren't that many successful black women. And that, for me, I was like, I know that's a crazy thing to say, because obviously as black women we know that's not true,
Yeah, that's not
but
true.
at the same time, for a black woman to think that, it just shows how important representation is, because I'm guessing she's not really seeing um successful black women at that level. So for me, I was like, okay, I think this is obviously a real issue in the podcasting space. And I started digging deeper. I started seeing all sorts of stats. And this was really just out of interest. I was just interested to see what is representation like, and then I found that only 14 of the top 100 podcasts on YouTube are hosted by women solely. Um, and YouTube is pretty much becoming a mainstream platform now. I think it's
Right.
it's
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that people watch on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, if we're not seeing representation in those places, that is pretty much erasure, whether it's intentional or not. We're not seeing black women in the mainstream. And I keep talking about black women because I am a black woman, but the work I'm doing really is to center women as a whole in media accurately as well. Because a lot of the decision makers in like in the media industry, it's predominantly white men, which means that a lot of the stories that we're seeing about women are being written or decided by white men, which is just wild, because what we're seeing in the media is not actually reflective of real life. And that's where like the whole narrative gap comes into play, because the two are not aligning, the two are not meshing. And I think this is why so many people are craving authenticity in content as well, because what we're seeing is not authentic. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent here.
No, I
I
love
don't know
it.
if I've answered your question at
No,
all.
you did. You did, because I think that it's so crazy that we're talking about the same thing. And I know that some will argue, we're seeing more faces on TV, blah 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 blah. But like I think that one of the reasons I started this was I was like, okay, I'm a working mom. I want to I want to speak to other working moms who like passionate about their job, but they still want to be there for
Mhm.
their kids. And then I was like, well, there's other podcasts out there, but I'm like, but there's not a lot of other podcasts out there
I'm telling you,
that are like
honestly.
with the same subject. And I'm like, all I, so it's kind of like, okay, that's where the need is. And it's funny because you would have thought that, the generation we're in with the advancement of AI, with the advancement of everything, that representation would have changed. And to even go further, I would say like women especially are the ones are more the decision maker in terms of like where they put their money. So it's crazy that a lot
Absolutely.
of like, white men are the ones that are like deciding what is seen when the women are the one that's purchasing from like what
Literally.
is bought, you know?
It's actually factual what you're saying though, because 70 to 80% of consumer purchase decisions are influenced by women. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not even just, oh yeah, like, oh, I know this person, she's the decision maker in the house. It's a fact. Up to 80% of consumer purchase decisions are made by women, but we're not
Yes.
creating content that is actually tailored to women, which
That's
is
crazy.
wild.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really crazy. Or I feel like sometimes the representation is not the best for the coming generation, or
Hmm.
for the ones that we want to see. And again, like I keep thinking, like it's crazy because I feel like I was having the same conversation when I was like 10 years old, and they're like, we
Yeah.
need more women representation, or black people needs to show up. And we had Oprah Winfrey, which was great. Like she she showed as though it's possible. But since then, I feel like we needed more people. Um,
Yeah.
especially as
Absolutely.
media has grown. Yeah.
I
So,
completely agree.
yeah.
Sorry, I know it's sorry. I'll let you
No, no,
ask
no.
the
I would
next
like you to
question.
just say whatever, say whatever.
Yeah, no, because I was just gonna say, I think, and even like having Oprah at that time, it's great. And seeing more representation here and there, it is great. But at the end of the day, women and black women, we're not a monolith. So we
Mm,
really need to be seeing different types of representation. And for me, especially like in the UK podcasting scene, even the UK, like when we speak about black people in campaigns, media, whatever, it's very London centric, which is fine. I'm sure like, the majority of the black population in the UK is based in London. But I actually don't live in London. And I know a lot of black people that don't live in London who we can relate to some aspects because obviously we're black Brits, but then other aspects I can't relate to that because that's not my experience. So I think it's really important to have representation across the board, and it's not just having one token black person doing this, because that
mm.
one token black person may not represent me or reflect me at all. So it's important that as women generally, we're just rising up and sharing our stories so we can have a good mix.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important. And I love this conversation because I think part of it is that fair, right? I feel like part of it is that, like I can't do that. I have to like I have kids. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I have to, we make up so many excuses for ourselves as to why we can't, we'll have something put in our heart, but we're like we can't do that. And so that's why I love your mission, and I'm like, yes, I need to have you on to discuss it because yeah, I feel like there definitely needs to be, yes, women in general, but I also think there needs to be that representation, as you mentioned, like YouTube is like TV nowadays, right?
Yeah, it
It
is.
is the media media, and if
It
there's not a
is.
lot of representation, then like we're gonna lose that aspect of it.
Mhm.
And for our kids as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you connect stories to freedom, and I think that what's interesting is you're able to bring about these stories. I said the one with like she was in pornography and all of that, and like how do you define that freedom? How do you like bring that story out in a way that's like
Mm.
gentle and like respectful? And then what role does you owning your own media platform play in achieving it?
Wow. Um, So for me, to start with, I really do think the definition of freedom is subjective. So I think it's different for each person. Obviously, I mentioned for me, freedom is like getting my nails done at 9 a.m. on a Monday, or picking my kids up, or just, like when they start going to school, being able to go to a school play without it impacting my work or having to tell anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
someone else's freedom may be being able to travel the world and just being able to work from anywhere. Like that may be somebody else's freedom. So I think it really is quite dependent on the person. And then in terms of like bringing out those types of conversations on the podcast, for me, like I said, I really wanted it to be a place where we were having deep conversations. So I didn't want it to just be another wellness kind of situation. Not that there's anything wrong with wellness, all of it is needed. But for me, I really wanted to go deeper, unpack topics like finance, sex. We've not even talked about that much on the podcast, but I do want to talk about it more. Um, like, overcoming porn addiction, things like that. I really want the Paula Oyinkan show to be a place where people can have those deep conversations that actually um kind of capture the essence of womanhood, because womanhood isn't just about wellness and Pilates and matcha, which we do love a cheeky matcha, we love Pilates, but at the same time, like, where do I invest my money? Like, you say women are good at investing, but how do I actually start? And, like, what about, I've just had a baby and I literally feel like my hormones are all over the place. I do not feel like myself right now. Where are we having those kind of conversations? Because that's all part of womanhood. So it's really important for me to have those conversations. And then in terms of like the individual guests, if it's quite a sensitive topic, then I usually ask them beforehand if they feel comfortable having that conversation. And most guests are pretty open, to be honest with you. But if it's not overly sensitive, then we just kind of get into it. And for the most part, I do have questions on my cue cards, but my goal is really just to have a conversation. So usually the conversation leads wherever it leads to. Um, and obviously, I do a bit of research on the guest anyway to kind of get an idea of what topics I would like to cover. So it really is just having an open, honest conversation. I just try and be myself so that they feel comfortable. All of the guests that come, usually we've got a separate green room. So if they want to get hair and makeup done, they can. They'll let us know beforehand. And I think that kind of warms guests up a little bit as well. It just makes them feel a bit more comfortable ahead of time. Um, so yeah, those are the things that I do in terms of like pulling the stories out of women. Um, and honestly, I really want to go deeper for the next season. I would love to go deeper. Um, and then the other part you mentioned is like, why is it important to have your own media platform, essentially? I think having your own media platform, it gives you power. It puts the power
Mm,
back in your hands. Um, Currently we're in a place, especially online, where attention is the currency. So if
mm.
you're able to get attention to what you're doing, attention in terms of like followership, in terms of views, then that puts a lot more power back in your hands. And I really do think power is the key to freedom because you can negotiate your own terms, you can basically make your own money, you can build wealth for the next generation. So really building your own media platform is kind of like taking back control and having power in terms of the narratives that are told about us as women and how they're told about us as women. So that's why for me, not only do I want to build my own media platform and have like a global empire, honestly, I would really love to help thousands of women do exactly the same so that they can take back their narrative and share their stories, but also they can make good money to be able to have the ability to be free in whatever way freedom looks like to them.
I love that. I wonder if being a mom has that put a a fire under you a little bit more to be like I
It
want to go
has.
to go do it.
It definitely
Like
has.
yeah. And in what way? And
Hmm.
what where do you see that shift happening, or how has you seen
It
that
really
shift?
has. Um, for me, I would say the shift has come, it's more like there's an urgency to do
Mm,
it. So prior to having children, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to have my own business. Um, I've had podcasts here and there, and it's funny because I think one of your questions mentioned something about being a podcaster, and I don't really even view myself as a podcaster. Like to me, this is a business, although like obviously it's a business with impact.
mm.
Um, but I never envisioned that the business I go all in on would be a podcast. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's just not what I thought would be the case. So I think definitely having children has given me that urgency. Having children has actually unveiled the whole route that I even want to go down. Because if not for the fact that my life changed so drastically in the space of 2 years, I may not have even wanted to like inspire women to be the best version of themselves in different stages of life. Um, because I met my husband in 2021. A year later, we were married. A year later, we had a child. And then another year later, we had another child. So it was such big things. And when I reflect, obviously, my hormones are like all over the
Yes,
place.
yes,
But
yes.
in the moment, I just felt like lost, like I was spinning, like, oh, everything's just happening to me. Like, that's kind of how it felt. So, because of that, I started sharing my journey of finding myself again. And because of that, I started realizing, like, oh, okay, other women are going through this too. And because of the fact that I had kids, I realized that, you know what, my best as a mother is not going to look the same as my best as a single girly. So, I need to just be my best in this stage of life. And that's what I mean when I say at every stage of life with the Paula Oyinkan show. So, yeah, I think having children has definitely like given me the purpose of what I'm doing and has also given me the urgency of what I'm doing as well because I want to make it happen quickly, as quickly as possible, though we spoke about slow growth, but as quickly as possible so that I can give my children the life that I want them to have. And obviously that they want to have two, ideally.
Yes. Yeah. Those children get expensive real quick. They
They
start telling
do,
you they start telling you what they
honestly.
want and you're like, you need a job.
Oh God. And
I
honestly, the things really add up with the kids. Because you want to like nurture their passions too. Like my daughter,
yes.
she's only 2 years old, but she's taught herself how to do like a roly poly. And I'm like, you need to get into gymnastics, girl. But obviously that's another course.
Uh, yes, my daughter is in gymnastics right now, and I'm like this about it because I'm like, is it that you want to flip or do you want to do gymnastics? Because there's
Mm.
because you can flip, but gymnastics is a little bit like more artsy, more like structured, more like
Mm.
refined. But like we can just do a
Yeah.
dumpling class, and I think that's a little bit less
Hmm.
less expensive.
Okay, a lot. Because I was thinking it's the power thing to. Initially, I wanted to like put her into ballet because that's like my
Yes.
childhood dream.
Oh yeah.
And then I thought like, ballet is all about like the elegance, the grace, and I thought
Yes.
gymnastics was a bit more about like the power. And I
Mhm.
definitely think she's more of a power kind of girl. That's what I had in my mind anyway.
Yeah, I love it. It's just overpower. That's very gracious. That's funny. I wonder if you can expand a little bit on that idea of season, right? Because I think that as moms, we kind of give ourselves, sometimes we can be hard on ourselves, right? We
Yeah.
forget that we are not, without children. Like I think it
Yeah.
doesn't really hit you until you have a baby and you're about to step out of the house and you're like, this is not as quick as I used to be
Yeah.
able to. So when you are doing something like having a business, how can you give yourself that grace?
I think in terms of like having a child, it's like our body is going through so much trauma. And for most people, because for me, I had a really positive pregnancy. I had a positive labor for both of my kids. So I thought the next day, like, boom, I can get up and get on with stuff. But it's like actually your body really needs to heal. It really needs to heal. And I don't even think it's just the physical healing, it's the emotional healing, it's the like mindset healing, all of these kind of things. I really do think as mums, you kind of need to have that realization that you're actually a mum now. And I don't say that to be like, oh, you're a mum now, you can't wear ripped jeans or whatever, like that kind of thing. But I mean, it's just like the physical realization that you're a mum now, like your body has changed a lot. It's been through a lot. I even remember like several weeks after having my daughter, I was like cleared to exercise and stuff like that. And I went to the gym. And back in the day, before having kids, I used to do interval training on the treadmill. So I would like sprint like as fast as I could and then walk and then sprint like 1 minute on, 1 minute off. And I tried to do that when I got back to the gym. And literally, when I first started sprinting, firstly, I like put it up to my usual speed, and immediately as it started going up, I started reducing it because I felt like my insides were about to drop out. And I think that's a really good example of like how you change so much physically. So you do need to give yourself grace because this is a completely new life that you're living. It's a new way of living. So one thing that I do as a mum to try and give myself structure and grace and be able to do the things that I do, I really do think you kind of have to give yourself that structure. So being an entrepreneur, I was like, okay, I need to set my working hours, and my working hours are when these kids are at nursery. So from 9:30 till 2:30, if I need to have a meeting, that's when I can have a meeting, and I can plan my day out. I can write my to-do list, and I really do think you need to be structured in that way. And I'm gonna be that person to say this because I was very much like, oh yeah, do what you want, wake up when you want, da 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 da. But the last few weeks, I've been waking up at 5 a.m. And I honestly, like, do you know what? This is not a prerequisite, but it's been a game changer. Waking up before these kids wake up, it not only can you like physically prepare for the day. Obviously, you can do that the night before as well, but you can physically prepare for the day. But you can just have a minute to yourself without somebody climbing on you, without somebody needing you. You can just be like for yourself, by yourself. I started waking up at 5 a.m. Me and my sisters, we do like a 5 a.m. prayer, and then I go to the gym. And firstly, going to the gym is something that I really enjoy doing. It always makes me feel good, and it's an opportunity to do something for myself. And I just feel like I'm I'm prepared for the day. It doesn't feel like the day is just hitting me left, right, and center, and it's just happening to me. It feels like, okay, we're like in motion together. So if you can wake up before your kids, honestly, I would highly recommend it. Highly recommend it.
No, I think I agree that 5 a.m. wake is a game changer. I have not gotten back to that. Some days I can do it, other
It's
days
a
I'm like,
process.
no, no. And you're right, because if you are waking up with them, sometimes I don't know, something about it. Like I feel like as soon as my kids are up and they're near me, it's like I'm going into fight or flight mode.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so much. It's too loud. Why is everything happening to
Yes.
me all at once? And I literally think about this all the time. Like, why is it that when I'm like, they come and they start speaking, my body is like shuts down. It doesn't want to.
Do you know what? I think it's the overstimulation of it all. It's like they're jumping on you, they're calling you mum, 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 mum. It's like, just give me a minute.
Yes, yes, yes. And you're like, but I love them. And they're like, anywho, thank you so much. This is such a great conversation and I'm so grateful, for it. One last question is, what is the most invaluable piece of advice you received from a mentor or a guest on your show that fundamentally changed your business approach?
Wow. Oh, that is such a good question. I've had so many great conversations, even not just with guests that I've had on the podcast. I've had a lot of really good um conversations. So a couple that I've had from the podcast, um, Elizabeth Sholaru, she really gave great advice on networking. Um, and the way she does it is where like she actually researches people heavily and she kind of like integrates into like their comments and stuff like that. I think that was great advice because I think people just they don't really know how to network, especially in this online world. So that was a great piece of advice. And then Vanessa Sanyauke, she's got like a global business for women, Girls Talk Global, London, something like that. And it wasn't necessarily advice, but it was something that really just helped me feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. So she says like every day she thinks about quitting her business. And I know that sounds so like it's not the most positive thing to say, but I really could relate to that. And I thought, oh, okay, thank God. Like, so it's not just me that's thinking this is really hard. And so just this is like three pieces of advice, but the final one I had this mentor from this like accelerator that I was accepted into, and I would say that this is actually more in line with your question because it did help me change my process with my business. And she was basically like, firstly, don't give everything to everyone all at once, especially when you're charging for something. Think about how you can spread that out so that you can elongate the lifetime value of your customer. So that honestly was a big game changer for me because I'm in the process of like creating a residency where essentially women come on and we like go through like how they can develop their story into IP and using the frameworks and stuff that I've done. And initially, it was just going to be like this is a 8 week program, it's X amount, and I'm going to give everything in there. But because of that piece of advice, I stretched it out into 4 stages. And I really do think it was the best decision because, firstly, it's brought the cost down in terms of the stages. So I feel like that makes it a lot more accessible for people. And secondly, I feel like I can give my all on a particular area that people can then implement. And honestly, I really think that was a game changing piece of advice for me. So don't give everything all at once. See how you can break it up and spread it out a lot more.
I love all the advice, but I want to say that I think the second one really shows that no matter what stage you're in, of your business, you're always dealing with that, that
Yeah.
inner voice. Because I understand I need to be like, maybe we should wrap this up.
Literally, it happens all the time. I'm always looking at job opportunities, like, oh, should I just apply for a new job?
No, I love it. I love it. So I would like you to when how can people apply for the residency, and then when can we expect season two?
Girl, so okay. Season two, I've literally been looking back at all of like my BTS content. Like, oh, I love this so much. It's so fun. But currently, I'm actually looking to secure a sponsor for season two so that we can just carry on production. Ideally, I don't want to have season breaks, so a sponsor will enable us to do that. So I can't give an exact date. I'm praying to God it's this year, but it's ultimately when we secure a sponsor. Um, and then secondly, people can apply for the residency. If you find me on LinkedIn, Paula Oyinkan, and then just DM me residency or comment residency on any of my posts, then I can send you the link to apply because there are only 10 spaces for the residency, but I am working on something that more people can join as well.
Perfect, perfect. Super excited for it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Paul. I'm not going to take it much of it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this great
Thank
conversation.
you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all my listeners. Please, please, please follow Paula online on LinkedIn as well as Instagram, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram too, but I post more on LinkedIn.
Yes, yes. I saw that. Yeah, I think that depending on your demographic or the people you want to reach, LinkedIn has actually been a really good like game changer, right?
It's so good.
Yeah, I think some people like Instagram and TikTok, but I'm like, no, LinkedIn is like there's something there. There's something more depth.
Honestly, especially if what you're doing is like a corporate thing, like I LinkedIn and Instagram I really, really do love, but TikTok is great for like brand awareness. Ultimately, it comes down to your goal, but don't sleep on LinkedIn. That's where the decision makers are.
Exactly. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you next week on the Busy Moms Get It Done podcast.